2. 1 2 1 2 2 2 1. Okay, good afternoon to everyone, and welcome to our class. In this 1 hour that we've got, I'm going to try and cover 2 chapters, chapter 4 and chapter 5. I have sent the chapters to you, so you should have them with you. And also, if you've got any questions around, let's say, things like the assignment, please hold that up until maybe tomorrow in tomorrow's class, which will be, we'll talk about the arrangement when it will be offered. I would like that class to be solely dedicated to the issues of assessment, talking about the different range of assessments that accompany this module. So please bear with me if I'm not addressing that now, but tomorrow's class is solely dedicated to the assignment. How do we write better assignments, and what can we do to improve, and so that you score very well on those assignments. So we'll have that ready for you tomorrow. We are going to do two things. The first thing we're going to do is I'm going to record this class, or it's already recording. And then midway, I'm going to stop the recording when we make the transition to chapter 5 and start the recording again. I do that so that we have a difference really between transition points of chapter 4 and chapter 5. So without wasting any more time, I would like to get into the chapter, which is chapter 4. And we are now making a move away, if you like, from the law aspect of the module to now talking about the HR activity aspect of the module. And when I refer to the HR activity part of the module, we are now talking about the activities that HR people do within the context of work, be they staffing, be they issues related to performance management, recruitment, selection, training and development, you name them. These are the activities that we are making transition to. But as we make transition to these activities, my request is let us try and make sure that we also don't forget the fundamentals of labor law that we have established so far, especially in the first set of chapters. So what you need to do is to ask yourself, as you focus on recruitment and selection, what are those fundamentals of the law that we have been referring to, and how do they feature, especially in the aspect of the HR activity that we'll be looking at. So this chapter 4, is simply entitled Human Resources Planning. Some other texts call it HRMP, Human Resource Management Planning. Others prefer just to use the word HRP, which stands for Human Resource Planning. And the chapter really is borrowing some aspects related to fields of strategic management, which emphasize the importance of paying attention to strategy and how it features as part of a routine that organizations are engaged in, and how it realizes some form of advantage for employees. And this part of the module then really draws into understanding the importance of resources, the importance of dynamic capabilities, and the importance of actually processes and systems and structures that should be in place in making sure that there's some form of advantage that is realized. And human resources planning, as an overview, is really centered around the fusion of strategy mixed with the practice of managing people, in ensuring that there is not only continuity in the workplace, but in ensuring also that there is some form of an advantage that is leveraged as part of the context and the setting that people belong to, or people seek to work inside that context. So there are terms that we're going to be introducing, terms like job description, job design, job analysis. And these terms really are terms that help us to not only understand the practice of HR human resources planning, but they help us to also pay attention to the importance of activities such as human resources planning in ensuring that there is not only continuity within the organization, but in also ensuring that there's also this aspect of sustainability, which we've covered in chapter 1. When we go further, the idea of organizational growth is a quest that people try to strive for throughout the organization. Growth can be seen as part of the process of change, and in that case, it comes naturally as part of change. However, growth can also be seen as something that is deliberate, that is purposefully intentional and infused by activities that are related to what is happening inside that particular organization. So in this regard, the role of managers plays an important part, because managers are therefore tasked with the responsibility of ensuring that growth happens. But growth also happens in a context, of numbers, where people would often argue nowadays that it's not so much about how many people we have in the organization, but it's so much also about the quality of people that we have in view of the tasks that we want. Others argue that growth also must be accompanied by an attention to the structure that is happening in that particular organization. And by structure, we are talking about how the organization is organized. Is it departmentalized? Is this an open type of structure that affects how people work? What type of structure is really in place to support the intention of growth? And finally, growth is also envisaged to happen when there is a greater emphasis on the importance of planning, not just planning as a once-off ritual, but as an annual ritual that happens throughout the entire organization in seeking to make sure that this organization is not only thriving, but also the organization is also responding to the ever-changing needs and context that it belongs to. So the importance here is therefore on this idea of human resources strategy. And as we pay attention to strategy, there are two perspectives that we must pay attention to. The first perspective is the external perspective, which is considering that which is happening outside the organization. I think in chapter 1, we've covered elements of the external perspective. Put simply, this consists of the PESTEL model, which is the political, economic, social, technological, legislative, and ecological environment, and how those different factors in that environment play a part in influencing the way people not only work, but the type of strategies that emanate from such a work context. The second perspective is the internal perspective, where we move away from the external environment to start paying attention more to what is happening inside this organization or inside this environment. And as we start paying attention more to what is happening inside the organization, we start paying attention more to elements such as those of job design, staffing, learning and development, rewards, which are basically, put simply, the HR activities that an organization strives to pursue in its bid to become competitive or achieve a competitive advantage. In so doing, the importance of human resources or strategic human resources management, therefore, consists of two important issues. The first one is the formulation of strategy. The second one is the implementation of strategy. You've often been heard it being said a lot in the public sector that we have a lot of work to do, particularly with aspects related to implementation. We are very good at formulating, but we're very bad at implementing. So the emphasis here is on making sure that we strike a balance between the two, that whatever we've formulated subsequently gets implemented and that we realize some form of benefit as part of that particular process that is before us. Of course, we can then talk about the other elements, which is then that human resources planning, simply put, is looking at our current needs and also considering our future needs and how these can be put together to try and path a way that allows us to be able to perform much better in terms of the organization that we're in. So it involves current focusing of the skills that we have, but also considering the future of where we can become better and how we can become better. So the current staffing levels and future staffing needs therefore become important in determining the idea that revolves around the issue of staffing or making sure that we've got enough people and the correct people in the jobs that they are currently doing, and also in meeting the future needs of that particular organization. This places importance on the importance of talent management and making sure that staff are not only engaged but retained. And the element of retainment simply means is we reduce turnover, we reduce the rate at which people are leaving the organization, seeking to better understand what their needs are, and also trying to fulfill these needs as part of the process of human resources planning. Importantly, human resources planning consists of steps. And if you forget anything, please try and remember this. What are some of these steps of human resources planning? Well, the first of these is to analyze the environment, be it the external environment or the internal environment. A conscientious attention of the type of environment that we are operating in becomes not only critical, but necessary to be able to position and path a way in the context that we're working in. After we've analyzed the environment, we therefore then pay attention to the current HR competencies and capabilities that we have. Put simply, and we did define this in chapter 1, capabilities are simply defined as those things that allow one organization to perform better than the other organization. And we need to first be honest of what we currently have and what we don't have as part of this process of analyzing the HR competencies and current capabilities. So if you notice that the first two stages are really concerned about paying attention to the external environment and then the internal environment. After we've done these two, we then determine what the current gaps are and the future requirements are. We then ask people who are occupying current position to say, what is it that is making you perform this job better? Or what could be better for you to be able to perform this job in a more effective way? And that information is then used to determine what is the current advantage or current gaps, and also to determine the future requirements or the future areas that the organization should be paying attention to. We then finally formulate and implement strategies that allow us to be able to address these gaps that we would have identified. Through doing so, we then achieve a state of equilibrium in terms of knowing what is it that are the strengths and the positives that characterize the environment that we are operating within. There are terms that accompany human resources planning, terms like job design, terms like under job design, specialization, standardization, coordination, authority, departmentalization. These are really terms that are related to how jobs are structured. In specialization, we have more emphasis on the areas that people thrive upon and work around. In standardization, it's making sure that we have some form of common occurrence around in terms of how tasks and activities are done. Coordination simply means making sure that there is some synergy created in terms of how things are done. Authority speaks to the power dynamic of the line and the staff in which who reports to who and how do they report to this person. And then finally, departmentalization is really the idea of organizing functions or activities into units that all seek to achieve the same goal in mind, but then you're leveraging on specialization of looking at the uniqueness of each department as an important mechanism contributing to the overall success of the organization. And then we then come to three terms which are often confused, but are different. And these terms form part of the terminology around a job analysis. And these terms are a job description, a job specification, and profiling. A job description, a job specification, and profiling. So for you not to confuse these terms, a job description consists of the tasks, the duties, and the responsibilities around a job. Whereas a job specification consists of the knowledge the skills and abilities about the job. So let's give an example. In your assessment, you will need to show that you've got an understanding of the difference between the two terms. So if a job advertises and says, the minimum requirement for this job is a degree, is that a description or a specification? Remembering that a description are the tasks, the duties, and the responsibilities. And the specification are the knowledge, the skills, and the abilities. So the requirement for a degree fits within the remit of knowledge. So this is a job specification. What if I say, and maybe somebody can unmute and answer this one, okay? The person to occupy this job must have a driver's license. The requirement of having a driver's license by the potential incumbent, is that a job description or a job specification?
That's a job specification.
That's okay. Does anybody have a different view? Okay, or the different view would be description. Okay, let's try again. Remember, a description consists of the tasks, the duties, the responsibilities, and then a specification consists of the knowledge, the skills, and the ability. So the driving part, it's an ability, so it's a job specification. How about the next one? The person must be able to speak English. Remember, the focus now is on the person. So is that a task, a duty, or responsibility? So in this case, the speaking of a language is part of the duty of the job. So that means it's a job description. So play around. What I often say to students is that students play around, go and look at different adverts. I think nowadays the recruitment adverts have been made a lot easier because they will now have a clear demarcation between the specification and the description. And the job profile really is all the information that is contained about the nature of the job, from how the job is done, inclusive of even those two, which is the description and the specification. So the most important thing in this chapter really for me are twofold. The first one is to know what human resources planning is. The second one is to know the steps of human resources planning. And the third one is to be able to differentiate between the three terms that we have introduced so far. So I'm going to stop the recording so that we make the transition now to a related chapter, which is chapter 5.